Hey guys, lesson question for today. How can I prevent injury and recover well in sport? We're going to look at warm-ups, we're going to look at stretches. So to start off with, we're looking at warm-ups, which should include pulse raises and dynamic stretches. Dynamic stretches are moving stretches, not the same as static stretches, which we will look at later in our cool down. Stretches should not be overstretched or bounced. Ensure the muscles are properly warmed up before you stretch them. The benefits of a warm up on the body: it slowly increases your body temperature. The range of movement is increased at the joints. You have a gradual increase of effort to full pace. There's psychological preparation as it prepares your mind for physical activity. You get to practice the movement skills through the full range of motion, and it allows for injury prevention. Cool downs. A cool down should be completed maintaining an elevated breathing and heart rate. So, a walk or a jog. It should be static stretching. So, these are our more still stretches. Each stretch should be held for 20 to 30 seconds. The benefits of completing a cool down are that they are going to gradually reduce your intensity. They'll allow your body to slowly recover. They'll help to remove lactic acid, CO2, or any other waste products from the body. It helps to allow your blood to redistribute back to the whole body from the working muscles. And it prevents that delayed onset muscle soreness, also known as DOMS, which we will have looked at in our last video. Hydration. Hydration should be maintained. If you are dehydrated, this can hugely affect your performance. So, as an example, you might have slower reaction time, which could mean you can't avoid a tackle in rugby, which may result in an injury. You must also have appropriate rest in between sessions to allow for recovery. Your body needs time to recover from exercise before you exercise again. If muscles cannot recover properly before they are used, you are at risk of injury. Overtraining should be avoided. So, as an example, you should be looking to lift the appropriate weights. Technique should also be correct. So, for example, your lifting technique. So, the do's of lifting: bend your knees, keep your back straight. The do nots of lifting: bend your back, keep your legs straight. Try to lift something that is too heavy by yourself. As you can see in the diagram on the right hand side, we have a really good example of what you should not do and what you should do. So keep that back nice and straight. Keep those knees down. If you can, even try to keep the heels on the ground. That'll really keep you nice and planted. Taping and bracing. So this can be used to help stabilize joints, which can help to prevent injury, especially pre-existing ones. So you can see on the right hand side, we have a nice knee brace here, which could be used if there was some sort of injury or instability in the knee. And then we have our shoulder taping up here again, which can be used to help keep that shoulder nice and stable if you have some sort of injury like a dislocation or something along those lines. Also, it is very important to wear appropriate clothing and footwear depending on the sport you're doing or the surface. So, for example, wearing spikes on a wet running track. So that's why in sports like rugby or football, it's not appropriate for you to wear trainers because you need the studs to grip into the ground. Wearing appropriate clothing may also come down to the types of clothing you wear. So as an example, you may want to wear tight-fitted clothing if you're doing a sport such as gymnastics, and as that will prevent your clothing from hooking onto, say, a beam or something along those lines. So an exam question for you. For which of the following activities would loose-fitting clothing not be appropriate? Tennis, hockey, dance, or trampolining? Now, whilst hockey, tennis, and dance, it would be more appropriate to wear tighter fitting clothing than looser fitting clothing, there's not necessarily the same level of hazard as there would be for a sport like trampolining. In trampolining, if you were to be wearing loose fitted clothing, that could hook to, say, the springs of the trampoline, and it could cause a dangerous fall or it could cause an injury. Whereas in dance, hockey, and tennis, whilst it would be more ideal to wear tight-fitted clothing, it's not going to have that same level of hazard. So it's not going to be as big a requirement as it would be for trampolining. Next question. A correct technique for lifting is to bend your back and keep your knees straight. Bend over at the waist and reach out with your arms. Bend sideways at the waist and turn your arms to the side, or bend at the knees and keep your back straight. 3 out of 4 of those put your back at risk, so pretty straightforward response there. It's going to be bending at the knees and keeping the back nice and straight. The back is super important when it comes to day-to-day life, and you don't want to mess that up. So make sure you keep your back straight as your number one priority. Which one of the following is not a precaution taken to avoid injury? Carrying out a warm-up, wearing jewelry, playing by the rules, and wearing safety equipment. Now, we didn't talk about this before, but it is super important to make sure that you are not wearing jewelry when you are playing sport. Particularly if you're playing maybe a contact sport like rugby and you wear a necklace, you would want to take that off or you could be at risk of choking. Next question, we have a 3-mark question. Before carrying out a weight training session using heavy weights, Robert carries out an appropriate warm-up, including stretching of the major muscles which will be used. Explain what other factors Robert should consider to reduce the chance of injury occurring during the session. So the command words we want to look at are explain, and we also need to remember that we do not want to include warm up because we've already done a warm up, or he's already talked about doing a warm up. So let's have a look at some potential responses. Okay, so reminder, we're looking to explain, and we can explain the following points up to 3 marks. The answer must include the factor to consider and an explanation that is applied to a weight training session. So weight training, super important. Robert should ensure that he understands the correct lifting technique before starting the session. Robert should ensure that he has a spotter available for the session. Robert should plan to avoid overtraining by following the correct intensity or use of 1 rep max test to calculate correct intensity. We've looked at that in a previous video. Robert should wear appropriate clothing or footwear during the session. For example, a clothing that cannot get caught on the weights, or footwear to provide support during weightlifting while standing. Robert should be using tape, bracing to protect wrists, or elbow support when lifting weights. So any of these would be appropriate. Remembering that the explanation must be applied to a weight training session. To recover from vigorous exercise, we must ensure that we cool down well, maintaining elevated breathing rate, heart rate, stretch, and removal of lactic acid. We must manipulate our diet to aid recovery. So, hydration, consumption of carbohydrates for energy. Or we could even look into ice baths or massages, which help prevent the likelihood of those DOMs, which we spoke about before. So, final exam question. Evaluate the recovery of a 100-meter sprinter to recover and prepare for the Olympic final. So we want to consider some command words. Well, the command word there is evaluate. And we want to look at the pros and the cons. We need to look at what specifically would benefit the 100-meter sprinter. And we need to look at what is needed for recovery. So to have a look at this response. So the AO1, we would start by looking at the knowledge. We would look at recalling what recovery is. So sprinters need to remove lactic acid and reduce muscle soreness to perform at their peak. The application. Why does this sprinter need these? So we could look at a cool down, which prevents stiffness and aids circulation to remove waste products. Hydration, replacing fluids lost through sweating, preventing dehydration. Protein-rich nutrition, which repairs muscles while carbohydrates restore glycogen storage. Massage and ice baths, which reduce inflammation and speed up muscle recovery. And then we need to talk about the pros and the cons. So this is our justification. This is where you're going to get your 4 marks. So for ice baths, they are effective for reducing muscle soreness, but they can be uncomfortable and may not suit all athletes. Massages improve circulation, but overuse can cause soreness. Rest and sleep. They are crucial for recovery, but too much inactivity can lead to stiffness. Overall, a combination of methods is best, with nutrition and rest being the most essential for peak performance in the Olympic final. So a reminder of what we looked at for today's session. We had a look at the importance of warming up. We had the importance of cooling down. We looked at hydration. We looked at rest. We looked at avoiding overtraining and using the correct technique. We also had a look at taping or bracing to prevent injury and wearing the appropriate clothing and footwear depending on the sport or the surface. All of these will be very beneficial when it comes to prevention of injury and recovering well in sport.